The British government, which continues to arm Israel, supplying crucial components, for example, to F-35 jets, raining death and destruction on the people of Gaza, has taken an official position of genocide denial, claiming there's no genocide taking place in Gaza. I'll explain. I'm going to talk with my brilliant guest about what that actually means. Despite the overwhelming majority of genocide scholars saying otherwise. The genocidal depravity continues in Gaza on a daily basis. The Western media is ignoring it, airbrushing it, not telling people the truth. It's not helped by the fact that so many Palestinian journalists have now been butchered by the Israeli state, often alongside their entire families, for a reason, because they are our eyes and ears. So much to talk about with the incredible Ahmed Najar, who is a writer, playwright, and has a book coming out, which I can't wait to read because it's already the title very searing. Even the sky turned away. Kind of a gut punch title. It's great to speak to you again. How are you doing? Given everything.
Okay, thank you. How are you? Good to speak to you too. Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, let's just start with the British government. Now, their statement, so they said this is David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary. The government has carefully considered the risk of genocide, including when permitting exports to the F-35 global program. That's for those, again, just to emphasize, who might not know, it's the F-35 jets, which Britain supplies the crucial components to. They can't function without them. And it says, as per the Genocide Convention, the crime of genocide occurs only when there is a specific intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. The government has not concluded that Israel is acting with that intent. You know, right at the beginning of this genocide, Raz Sigal, the Israeli-American Associate Professor of Genocide and Holocaust Studies, pointed out it's actually very rare for genocidal intent to be as overt as it has been in terms of Israeli ministers and officials. I mean, you kind of ask yourself, given the deluge, I mean, it just, as an example here of, just in the last, like in May, the Israeli finance minister, Gaza will be entirely destroyed. A week later, the Israeli prime minister, Netanyahu, boasts Israel is destroying more and more houses in Gaza and Palestinians accordingly have nowhere to return. Just two examples there within, when you hear that, I mean, because you're a Palestinian from Gaza and you're also, like myself, ruled over by the British government.
Yeah.
When you hear that your government here is saying that, what's your response?
I mean, it is not surprising, obviously, that they have been saying that they have been complicit in this genocide from the very beginning, supplying Israel with arms and weapons and even covering up for their war crimes and insisting that Israel is not committing a genocide in spite of the overwhelming scholars or genocide scholars and human rights organizations concluding that what's going on in Gaza is a genocide. So for the David Lammy to say such a thing, it didn't come as a surprise to me. But of course, it's disheartening for me to see my own government here that has ignored all these voices and decided to go ahead and say, no, we don't see it as a genocide. And it just makes me wonder, who is the British government to come out and say it's not a genocide, while they actually have their hands are full of blood on this genocide, and decide that actually, no, it's not a genocide. Well, I mean, it's kind of, to me, it emphasizes the fact that they are part of this genocide, and that's why they want to deny it. Because I think if it proves it's a genocide, and it will, and as it is quite clearly it's a genocide, the British government might be held accountable for their actions to, one, not to do anything to try to stop this genocide, because it's their duty to try and do everything they can to stop a genocide from happening. Two is enabling this genocide. They have been enabling this genocide. So the denial from the British government hasn't come as a surprise to me.
I mean, I think you're just spot on there about, basically at this point, it would be a confession if they said it was a genocide, because, I mean, look, 86% of the scholars at the International Association of Genocide Scholars, the clue really is on the tin, that's the International Association of Genocide Scholars, 86% voted for a resolution making clear this is a genocide. And if the British government admits it's a genocide, then the question then is, well, how long has it been a genocide for? And how many weapons have you offered Israel in that
Exactly.
time.
Exactly. How many weapons, the surveillance that they helped them with, the jets that they were flying over Gaza to collect information and data about people. There's so many issues that Britain has been involved to help Israel.
Israeli soldiers being trained here, British nationals serving in the IDF without being prosecuted.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then, if we want to also expand from just the government and the media as well, that they've been covering up for the genocide and allowing actually that's one thing, allowing giving Israel a platform to portray their narrative, while Israel is not allowing journalists to come in to get into Gaza to report on what's going on, and killing all the Palestinian journalists at the top of that. In spite of all of this, the Western media has offered a platform for Israeli politicians, Israeli narrative to fly in their platforms. So to me, this is also enabling a genocide. And it makes me wonder, why would for example, the BBC or other Western media allow the Israeli voices in those medias while Israel is not allowing them to get into Gaza to cover and see what's going on, to cover the news and see what's going on? I mean, that's a point to me. Like, how on earth would you allow these Israelis to come into your TV to portray their point of view? And at the top of that, do you also take what they tell you as a fact and report it as if it's the news, without questioning those facts, without actually even try to investigate it, as if it is just the news and we take it as it is, take it as face value, and that's it.
President Isaac Herzog, the Israeli president, visited Britain this week on an official visit and was treated to an audience with Keir Starmer. At the beginning of the genocide, he declared there was no uninvolved civilians in Gaza, that there's an entire nation out there responsible.
Yeah.
As South Africa's submission to the International Court of Justice, obviously the genocide case there, as South Africa's case made clear, Israeli soldiers had repeatedly quoted those words, and we've seen that direct link between what Israeli politicians say and what is said on the ground. There's a reason why the direct and public incitement of genocide is criminalized by the Genocide Convention of 1948, because all genocides begin with words, of course. I mean, he was given that official visit, treated with respect, no arrest warrant, which was refused the request by the Attorney General.
Yeah.
Whilst people holding placards opposed to genocide are being arrested by the 100, many of them elderly. How do you feel looking at
that? I mean, it makes me, to be honest with you, actually, I somehow I started feeling less and less of a Londoner somehow. I started feeling that I don't want to belong here anymore. In fact, I used to love London and love the UK, and part of me, I have spent more than half of my life in the UK. It's part of my identity. But seeing how the government has handled the genocide in Gaza, it's blown me away, and I cannot take it anymore to feel that I belong to the UK. One of my colleagues actually once asked me, said, like, would you hold the British flag as because you're British citizens as well, and I felt awkward about that, and I just questioned that, why would I feel awkward about holding a Palestinian the British flag and feel as proud as I'm holding the Palestinian flag? But particularly in this genocide, the British flag started being like some kind of form of oppression, in a way, form of it's a representation of a government that is siding in the side of an oppressor, on the side of a genocide, and I just felt very funny about it. It felt awkward in a way that it doesn't really represent me. No one that is siding with the genocide represents me. But then it's all a conflict, internal conflict in a way, because that's not what the Britishness is supposed to represent. The British flag is supposed to represent the whole of the British people, from all religions and colors and what have you. But in a way, it's becoming that sign of oppression, that sign of siding with a genocide. And it feels so wrong to feel this way. It feels so wrong. It really does feel so wrong, because it should feel a moment for, you being proud as part of this country as well.
Does it? I mean, because look, the British state is not only criminally complicit in the genocide, but obviously played a crucial role in what has happened to Palestine. Obviously, the Balfour
Of course.
Declaration and
Of course.
mandatory Palestine. But does it feel any comfort that the British state is obviously complicit, but the polling of the British public, despite what the media is feeding them, despite what politicians are saying, 70% support, think Israel's committed war crimes, and overwhelmingly oppose giving Israel any weapons at all. They want a total arms embargo. The majority want Benjamin Netanyahu to be arrested for war crimes and crimes against humanity. I mean, so is that, I guess there's the state which we haven't, we've failed so far to get public opinion to. But I don't know, is that, because you're right, I mean, Britain's obviously up to its neck in crimes throughout history, but is that some comfort? At least the people have something, have shifted
absolutely.
because of Palestinians.
Absolutely. It's totally, comforting to see that you are part of a society that is not standing in the wrong side of history. You're part of a society that is refusing what's happening. And then in a way it feels okay. They do whatever, like there's so many people do whatever they can, like they're going out demonstrating, writing to their MPs and what have you. It does make a difference. And to me, as somebody who feels that belongs to the UK, and also I make sure all the time I see this demonstrations and I see people doing any kind of activities, I make sure that I tell my family that it's, that the world is with them, the world can see, and the world is doing whatever they can to try and stop this genocide. But governments are not. Governments are complicit, and it's not all the British people who are complicit. No, the government is complicit. I make sure to tell my family this, because sometimes they jokingly say, it's all coming from you guys. You are the problem. You are caused us all of this. And then, it's half jokingly, but I make sure it's true as well. But I make sure not to make them, to make them aware of what's happening actually on the ground here.
As you're saying, what is going on the ground right now is Israel is waging this assault relentlessly, of course, on the people of Gaza. And most of Gaza has been reduced to ruins, to rubble. In terms of the assault on Gaza City, you've got family, you've got relatives in Gaza, of course. You've got loved ones there. I mean, in terms of what would you say, what is so important that people know right now? Because the media is ignoring so much. What's actually happening to the people of Gaza right now? What are people facing on the ground? As Israel's plan is to launch a massive assault on Gaza City while starving its population and intending to put survivors in a concentration camp.
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, today, up until about a couple of hours ago, 50 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed. You can't see this in any of the mainstream Western media. You can't see it in the BBC. It's not being reported. You can't see it anywhere. And that is actually considered to be quite a low number. Every day, there have been about from 80 to 100 people, and that's the average, that have been killed every single day in Gaza for the last 2 years, but particularly the last sort of 4 to 5 weeks. It's been intensified, and there's more and more people getting killed, and more people die of starvation as well. So that all of this, we are not seeing it in the Western media. You don't see it, and that's the thing that I've always. It always really angers me. Why can't I see that you're reporting that 50 people have been killed in Gaza today? Is it because it's no longer it's a news for you, or is it because these people are not worth reporting? But it's also that is just at a part of like the number of people being killed, but also the number of people being made homeless, displaced, the number of buildings that are being destroyed, the heritage that is being completely erased. There are some areas that I know that existed there for hundreds of years, and they're part of our heritage. And Gaza is extremely old. Gaza relate back to more than 5,000 years, and there are some stuff is still standing, where is still standing, and Israel is destroying all of this. Israel is destroying priceless buildings and streets and pieces of heritage right now in Gaza. Many people don't know, for example, the Gaza claims to have the oldest jars of wine jars that are actually displaced in a museum in Paris right now. And then for me to see all of this being completely erased, it really breaks my heart, and it completely breaks my heart. And the world is indifferent about it. Indifferent about one of the oldest churches in the world. Indifferent about or a mosque that's 1,100 years old, and the building itself is more than 3,000 years old. Is the Al Omari Mosque? Are they indifferent about this building has been completely destroyed? Indifferent about the people getting killed every day? Indifferent about the concentration camps that are being made there? And I actually wrote about that. You mentioned the concentration camps. I wrote about, and I did some comparison about the Nazi concentration camps and where people live right now in Gaza. And in many cases, where people live in Gaza are much worse than the concentration camps in terms of the space that people are living in, and in terms of the access to food, in terms of the access to sanitation and health and drinking water. There are places in Gaza much worse than the concentration camps. So that where people are living now, people are living in tents without sanitation, without healthy water, without access to healthy water, without obviously without electricity or any means of life at all. And then you look at the BBC and you see them having a reporting whether Israel has been disproportionate in their reaction to 7th of October. And it makes me look, really? Are you still really talking about whether it's disproportionate or
Well,
it's mind blowing.
It's astonishing that media narrative has survived every war crime under the sun, really. You went in terms of just narratives which are toxic. And I know you visited the Paris Peace Forum back in a few weeks ago, which is a non-profit organization in France, which brings together political leaders, civil society organizations, individuals across the globe. And it was, of course, focused on Gaza. And it brought together, including people from Israel, including people who would present themselves as being supportive of peace, critical of Benjamin Netanyahu. It's nice because I read what you wrote about it in The Guardian, and it struck me... frankly, that I'd keep saying Israel is in the grip of genocidal mania. I've interviewed courageous Israelis who genuinely are opposed to the genocide and will call it a genocide. It's kind of a really key point. In fact, the Israeli genocide scholars are amongst the consensus of genocide scholars who say it's a genocide. And if you're not calling it a genocide at this point, you kind of think, what does it take, guys? I just want, in that light, because I read what you wrote in terms of, I guess, the frustration of people, because it's easy to think Netanyahu's, that's what the media often is, he's a bogeyman. What kind of people from Israel did you meet, and what were the frustrations you had?
The people were one. It was supposed to be Palestinians and Israelis, but it was like 3/4 of Israelis and 1/4 Palestinians, and that is because of the Palestinians couldn't get. So this is where the core of the issue is in inequality. The Palestinians could not get permission to leave the West Bank, and obviously no one could come from Gaza. And the Palestinians who managed to go, some managed to come from the West Bank, and the others were coming from abroad where they could travel. So to start off with it, to see it is like, okay, I can see the inequality. It really is there, but it's. And then we talked about peace, and everybody was talking about big plans of peace and prosperity, and as if it was no genocide happening. And I felt like I'm the strange person in this room. I don't know. Are they from different world? And I spoke about the genocide, and everyone felt like I'm sort of like, it's like an obstacle to peace and to this amazing stuff that we're coming to achieve here. And I was like, you can't be serious talking about peace and prosperity. Well, we can't even stop a genocide. But then it surprises me that actually they didn't even recognize it as a genocide or admit it to what was going on in Gaza as a genocide. And then I had a kind of conversations with individuals. Many of them denied that it was a genocide. Some have come individually to me and discreetly said, like, we agree it's a genocide, but we cannot say it is a genocide. It's for us. It's extremely difficult to admit that we are committing a genocide. And I think and those are the people, not the mainstream in Israel, by the way, because the mainstream doesn't believe that they
no,
should.
That's still a fringe, which is, I'm afraid,
Exactly.
part of the problem. Because that even people, I mean,
yes,
it's interesting. I went to Serbia last year, and the UN passed a resolution condemning Srebrenica genocide.
yeah.
And the biggest tower in Belgrade had a sign flashing around it: "We are not a genocidal people," because the Serb position is we had genocide committed against us during World War II, which they did. Therefore, how could we are victims always? I mean, that's what they're saying, isn't it? It's like, because which the Jewish people suffered a genocide within living memory, the Shoah, 2/3 exterminated, of course, by the Nazis. The idea, there's that then sense as well. We a state which claims to represent Jewish people. I mean, it's just, I guess, I think it's frustrating, isn't it, to say the least, that, well, it's not frustrating, it's damning that you can't just look at the facts, not to use the horrors of the past to not describe the horrors of the present. I mean, that's what they're doing, is say because we suffered this horror in the past, therefore, and they should be demarcating between Israel and the Jewish people anyway.
Exactly, but it really made me think. It was an eye opener for me to think about, like, what made them. Why are they in such a denial of what's going on to the Palestinians? And some of them were in a big denial about it, in a way that actually the Israeli army is targeting Hamas, and unfortunately, some people get killed on the way. And that shouldn't be the case, they said. But they really believed that the IDF is after Hamas, and that's it, that's not intending to destroy the Palestinians in Gaza. And it shocked me in a way that why are these people think this way? They seem to be nice. They seem to have some, support. We are all humans, and they seem to have all of these basic feelings about what we are as human beings, and bias to humanity and what have you. But then I thought, well, are they really brainwashed? But then when you classify somebody as a brainwashed, it feels like they are victim as well. They've been.
I know what you mean. Yeah, they've got to take. At the end of the day, they've got agency, haven't they? And if they're very engaged people, they're hyper engaged. They spend a huge amount of time focused on this particular issue. All the information is there. I think kind of excuses ran out quite a long time ago to deny.
Exactly, but then also if you look at the Israeli society, is one of the most people who use the internet globally. Also, the well-traveled. More than 80% of the Israeli Jewish people who have another passport, and they can, they are another sort of nationality, and they could travel, and they're well traveled. And you wonder, well, you're well traveled, you have all the technology in the world. Why can't you see what's going on? Why are you fixated in what your government is providing you with, the information that's providing you with? Why can't you just look outside and see? But they're well invested. The fact that the Israeli army is compulsory, and then most of them have members of their families in the Israeli army, and most of them they themselves have served in the Israeli army, or are serving the Israeli army. That's why I feel it's almost denial on a way that we the organization we are part of, that's protecting us, can never commit something like that. I couldn't get behind the psychology on why would they think that the Israeli army is not committing a genocide in Gaza. But it's fascinating for me. It's fascinating.
Well, to quote a conservative commentator, Ben Shapiro, don't do that very often. He's a pro-Israel commentator. Facts don't care about your feelings. I mean, honestly, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, obviously, about the worst horror of our age, which your loved ones are suffering. And I know it takes a huge amount of emotional labor to have to talk about this, which, those of us who aren't Palestinian, you always have to bear in mind. It's, lots of people, who aren't Palestinian, look at this with overwhelming horror. Just imagine you're Palestinian. You have to keep looking at this every day and talking about it. So please do share this video, everyone. Press like, subscribe, leave your comments, your thoughts. That encourages more people, of course, to listen to Ahmed. But honestly, it's such a pleasure to speak to you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.